Okay. Hi, guys. Just to let you know, I am your professor. My name is Sherry Benyuski, and this is not only your first time working with this particular big blue button technology, but it's also mine. So I'm sure there's going to be a couple of things that we have to figure out as I move along. If you are live, that is fantastic. Welcome. If you are watching this recorded, also same. It does not matter which one you're doing. Either one is going to work for this particular class. We will tend to have these videos will be once a week, but they will also tend to be about an hour long. Now, sometimes there will be time for discussion in that hour. Sometimes there won't, depending on what kinds of things we need to get done. But let's go ahead and start. I want to start as if I'm going to assume that you haven't dealt with this particular format before. So let's go over a couple of things, and I'm going to try and figure out how to share my screen. There we go. So let's go and see if I can figure that out. All right, we'll start with this. Okay, I am going to assume that you are coming into Canvas for the very first time. It's on student view so you can see what it looks like for you. You won't have the pink parts here, that's just for me, but the rest of this should look about the same as something that you are seeing yourself. And so, of course, you probably are still trying to figure out where's Blackboard and where's Canvas and how does this work? So for those of you that are familiar with Canvas, you can let your brain drift for a minute, but for most of you, this is how it's going to work. Notice that you have two toolbars over here, right? We have a toolbar that's for everything in Indiana Tech, and we have a toolbar here in the secondary one that's related to the course itself. Now, a couple different things I want you to be aware of, both as pros and cons, kind of depending on how you view this. I've worked with Canvas at another institution, and so I know a little bit about how this might go or not go. Notice you can go to all of your courses here, all of your dashboard there. Your dashboard is going to look different than everybody else's because it's going to contain only your classes and not everybody's. I want to point out this thing here. This is the calendar. If you click on the calendar, there's a couple things you may or may not be aware of. Notice that when I click on it, I have these things all popped up. They're green because I have over here coded green for research writing. Now let me show you how I did that, because you may have multiple. Oh, I can't do it that way. Let's see if I can. Hold on. Oh, I can't. It won't let me do the double thing that way. But when you're opening up your dashboard and you first pops up, you'll have all of the classes that you are populated into at one given time. And you'll notice on the upper right-hand corner, there's kind of a dot, and it's various colors, might be red, orange, blue. It's kind of whatever your professor has made it. But you can change that color. So like I have made research writing green. And if I had multiple courses here, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, they could be color coded in any way that I wish. See there that? Do you see how I did that? See that little hamburger menu is what we call it? If you click on that, just did it before, right? Yeah. Well, you saw it pop up, right? When you click on it, it should for you guys as well as the way it just did for me. It pops up all the colors. You can change the color to whatever you want. So therefore, you can see whatever course or courses you want to see at any given time. So like notice if I unclick that, that's the research writing. Notice it disappeared, right? Oh no, I have nothing due. Well, I do. I just have not clicked it on. So that means you can click all of your courses on at once if you want to see your entire schedule. Maybe this is helpful. You can see, okay, on Tuesdays here and Thursdays, I don't have anything due, but I can see that on Thursdays and Sundays, it looks pretty heavy, right? So you can figure out how to make that happen. Notice that you can see that on Thursdays, discussion boards are due. Now, that is not the first thing to consider with discussion boards. Make sure that when you're thinking about discussion boards, you really should have two dates in mind for those. One is the initial post, I'm posting something. And the second thing is then waiting for my peers to respond, and I'm going to go and respond to them. So that's the second date. That's the end due date, right? I have to post something, then there's a period of time in which I'm responding to other people, and there's a deadline. Now, I want to point out that in this particular class, you are allowed 1 week of time in which to turn something in late for a small penalty. Anything past 1 week, you have to have a particularly good reason for. Hospitalization, that kind of thing. So because this class goes really quickly, you can't afford to get more than a week behind, or it will be a mess, right? But I do not allow there's one grade I don't allow late, and that's discussion boards, because if you are posting to the discussion board after the cutoff date, it doesn't help anybody, right? It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. It's an irrelevant thing. So I'm not going to allow any late discussion board grades. If you don't respond in time for the discussion boards, it's just a 0, because otherwise there's no point. So you have to keep that discussion board grade in mind ahead of time. Post at the dates due, the initial post, make sure that you're then responding to the appropriate number of your peers by the due date for that. Okay, those are intended as preparatory things. So you usually have a rough draft of some kind that you're working on. You post it to the discussion board and say, hey, help me with this rough draft. What do you guys think of this? They give you some feedback. Then you have time to go back and fix the things that they tell you. Now, this has another cool feature, and that is if you click on thing in the is cool. However, there is a big however here. If you are just going to the calendar and just looking at the things and all of the stuff that you need in order to understand these things. So, I don't know how to do this or that. And I know it's because they haven't read the readings, because if you're just reading the assignment, it's not going to make sense. So although this is a cool feature, right, and it tells you these cool things, it doesn't tell you the things that you're supposed to do prior to this assignment. So you can go to the calendar over here, but let's go back and take a look at the other part here. If I can go back to it. If we can find it. Okay, there we go. So again, we have the outside toolbar, and that's where you're going to find that calendar. That's where you're going to find your email inbox. That's where you're going to find some other stuff over here. And then this part here, this toolbar that I'm pointing out here, related just to the course that you're talking about. Okay. Now, so let's go to take a look at this. This is how it should look when you log in. Hey, welcome to ENGL 2322 research writing. So probably you are sophomores. Probably you're partly live on campus and partly online, and you're taking this because you need it to hear more about research. That's not going to be true of all of you, but that's the general idea for most of you. Notice over here, you're going to see a to-do list at all points in time that'll tell you what's coming up. That's useful, right? Very good. It goes along with the calendar, all the due dates here and stuff. Again, you can click on stuff here. Okay. The syllabus stuff, all the policies are going to be here. Your online policies, your student resources. But here's the important part that you need to look at. This. So you have your opening, but then you've got to scroll down to the modules, right? Okay. So start with getting started and then move through. If you are not these modules, missing all the stuff that you need to prepare yourself for the assignments. Basically, you're missing the lectures. Okay. So again, you're going to start with getting started, meeting your professor. That's me. So this is how you're going to do it. Now, notice with Canvas, you see the stuff here, and then there's always this little gray next button, and that's how you move through a module. Okay, so right now I'm moving through the getting started stuff, and I meet my professor, then I get to meet my classmates, I tell a little bit about my notice that several have responded. Okay, the discussion and people are introducing themselves. This is great. So I can choose to reply, right, to people as I want to. You can see how many people have replied. Um, Try and respond to everybody. So that means you might need to scroll down as it gets longer and longer and people respond. And then I'm going to keep going through to the next one, right? So again, what's Tech Live? Well, this is Tech Live, right? So some of you will choose to come to Tech Live at the time that is scheduled, and others of you will not because you're working, you have lives, whatever the case, you'll be watching it recorded. Totally fine. Doesn't gonna either way. But this will kind of walk you through, what do I do? How do I do it? What am I supposed to do with the live tech reflection? What does that mean? Again, so make sure you're looking for tabs, make sure you're clicking through tabs. This is stuff that's going to give you things to take a look at. I will go over some of this stuff here, but notice that you can click on these little buttons. So let's take a look at this video. This video is going to give you an overview of using Big Blue Button from the point of view of your student. Polls to the left, I can see the chat list, public chat. Okay, so that wasn't bad, right? It's a lot of information to remember, though. So you may want to refer back to that. Okay, so we're just going to keep moving forward. So we've looked at this video here. We're still in the live text session, and we are still in the getting started section, right? So, which is where you're going to begin. Notice there is a course preparation quiz, and I want to say a little bit extra about that course preparation quiz because if you don't take this, this is how they just determine if you are interacting with the course or not. So if you don't take the course preparation quiz by the second week, you might get yourself kicked out of the course, which we don't want, right? So make sure that you do take that course preparation quiz. It's basically to help you it's an easy grade, right? So it helps you go through things and see the syllabus, make sure that you know what you're doing. It only has 5 questions, so pretty easy. Okay, so then you just click on the begin. All right, I'm going to go back over here to home. Okay, so home's always going to take you back to the home part of this particular course. Again, you can see course calendar up here, course notifications, in announcements. Let's take a look at announcements. You should have at least one, and that's this announcement about this big blue button stuff. You'll see weekly announcements there. Mostly those are going to be reminders from me. Don't forget this. Whatever format issues maybe I'm seeing, I might report to that. So take a look at those. If you can't find the modules, there's a module button, right? Again, we are in this getting started section. Notice that you can go to any part of it at any point in time. So once I start at this beginning part and then I click on the next through it, let's say I get a phone call and I have to stop and exit, I can always say, oh, where was I? I was here, so I can go back in from this way. And again, this is by clicking on the module part here, right? And then, of course, you're going to begin the actual module 1. And again, I recommend that you start at the top and work your way down because they are in order that makes the most sense. So you're going to see an overview. You're always going to see an overview for every module. It'll tell you what to expect. Now, if you have not taken very many online courses before, or maybe this is your first one, you definitely want to know that they're different in pacing and thought process than a live class, right? A live class, it gives you more immediacy because you know that you might be called on in class, or you might have to talk to the person next to you about something that you learned. Here, it's a little bit more less intuitive, right? Because you don't necessarily have to interact with people, which is why you're here, right? Right. So again, though, make yourself a plan. Take a look at how a week is structured. There is a pacing guide here. So start, and you should start on Sundays or Mondays for sure, right? So start on Monday. Monday's actually begin the week for this particular way the class works. Start all the reading stuff, do all the readings, listen to things as much as you can. On Tuesdays, you're going to see that we do the live thing. So Mondays, you've done the reading, you probably are prepared. Tuesdays, you can either come live to this live text session or listen to it recorded. That'll continue your thought process in what you're learning. And then you're going to want to complete journal 2 in this way. Notice there's something due almost every day, if not every day. You want to do it that way, or at least take a look at your schedule and go, okay, I know that my work schedule is heaviest on Tuesday. That's not going to work for me, but that means I'm going to do stuff early on Monday, or you've got to find a way to schedule time. This particular course you should be expecting to spend somewhere between 3 and 5 hours per week on the course, depending how fast you read, how fast you write, all those sorts of things. So don't wait until Saturday or Sunday to do stuff, for goodness sakes, right? Another thing I want to point out here. So notice that on Thursdays when that initial post for the journal is due, the discussion board stuff, right? And then it says that Sundays when the replies are due, but that's also when the project is due. So if you are posting your initial stuff on Thursday and then not replying to your peers until Sunday afternoon, that is not giving them any time to look at your responses, make the adjustments, and then turn in the project, right? So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense from me, my point of view. I would make it differently. but this is the way Indiana Tech has arranged it. I would suggest posting your initial post by Thursday and then finishing up your peer reviews by Saturday. That gives you time to look at their peer responses to you and go, oh, I need to fix this, and them time to do the same. Okay. Anyway, my own 2 cents on that. So here's your module 1 stuff. Notice there's always going to be a next button until we finish. I want to point this out. Sometimes you get something like this and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? There's nothing here. Do I click next? No, you need to find the reading by clicking on that gray button. And it should open it up. And this is how very cool that you don't have to pay for a textbook, right? I'm not a big fan of not having a textbook myself because I like having a textbook. I like to read a book, but I am a big fan of not having to pay for a textbook, and you probably are too. So you're going to see that these readings here, like what is primary research versus secondary research? That's important. We need to know the difference between primary and secondary for this class is really important. So this thing is going to talk you through how to make that work. It's also going to have other links up here for you to look up even further. So, right. So some people like to print these things and then write on them as they're reading. So they're interacting with things. If that's helpful to you, do it that way. If not, you can read it on a phone. You can read it on a laptop. But you're going to make sure that you want to open up each and every one of these handouts and links. Okay. So let's take a look here. This is one of the things that we're looking at for what is a discourse, community, and culture. Big terms for something that you're going to be researching throughout this particular class. So what's a discourse community? Well, it's a community that thinks of itself in some particular way as a network, right? I might be a pickleballer, for instance, or I might be a professor of English. I might be a club member of some kind. I might be a person who loves to troll on Facebook. I'm a member of the discourse community that trolls on Facebook, or I am a member of the pickleball community. Whatever it is, a discourse community then is some sort of a social network, right? That's it could be any number of things. It could be a large one, like my LinkedIn community, all the people that I know on LinkedIn. It could be a very small one, such as the people I have coffee with on Monday mornings, right? It could be very small, it could be very large. You could be members of multiple different discourse communities. In fact, you are. They each have their own culture, right? So let's put it this way. Let's say a culture has a different language, right? So if I am going to church, then I might use different words. So for example, I might say that I'm going to go and fellowship. Okay, that's one word that churches people use. Whereas if I were a part of another group, I might say that I'm going to a party, right? Party, fellowship, they have similarities, but they also have differences. They mean different things by the type of wording that we choose. And that's going to be the same way with any discourse community. They all have a sort of language that you're part of, right? So you know that you speak differently in the bar than you do in Sunday school. Different, right? And you innately will know that, some people better than others, but this is what a discourse community is. Now, you're going to be doing some research about discourse communities in this particular class. And so it could be something geographically speaking, like the city where you live. It might be something that is an organization of some kind that you're part of. Could be even Indiana Tech. For example, we in this course 2322 are a community of research writers, right? So you're going to be picking some kind of thing to think about with the discourse community. There's a little rubric here at the bottom that can give you different types, right? There's personal and family community, so there's geographical communities, there's academic communities, there's social communities. So you're going to be thinking about which one of those you might want to research. get more to that. So let's continue further on. Let's take a look at what it means to be part of a community by watching this video about cultural icebergs.
In his book, Beyond Culture, Edward T. Hall developed the iceberg
Okay, so that's a pretty visual, very good visual aspect of what the iceberg theory with cultural communities looks like. And you're going to be, unsurprisingly, trying to pick one of these that sticks above that water. What is this, cultural community that I'm going to look at? And then digging down and figuring out what are the underpinning things that make this community tick. Okay, so let's look through here. The next reading, or the first big reading you're going to be taking a look at is Can You Tell the Truth in a Small Town by Kathleen Norris. And when you click on that little box, you're going to see that a link comes up for this. It's not a huge long thing, but if if you were alive in a class in front of you, I'd ask how many of you grew up in a small town versus how many of you grew up in a big town. If you grew up in a small town, you know everybody knows everything about you really fast. So that's the question. Can you tell the truth in a small town? Now, in order to go a little further here, we're gonna take a look at Kathleen herself. So we're not going to watch all of this, but I'm going to play a little bit so you get a feel for who in the world Kathleen Norris is. I think that gives you a little feel for what Kathleen is like. It's always kind of helpful to know what a person is like that you're reading, right? So I wanted you to get a feel for how that works, what she's like. I'm going to go back over here to the beginning at the modules. In case you want to figure out where I am, I clicked on modules. Here I am scrolling down through getting started, down to module 1. And you can see that we have gone through and taken a look at these things up to here so far. So now we can jump back in by going here, right? This is a second reading. And this is, again, and we're still dealing with discourse communities and what they're like and what they are. And this one is called Finding Our Tribe. This is an example of a discourse community that's the running community. So what does it look like? Why do we need it? This gives you an example of what a running community might look like. And you may not be a runner. I'm not a runner. But it'll give you an idea of what a discourse community consists of. Okay, so when you read through that one, that'll make a little bit more sense to you. Now, here's the first sort of stop and take a look at and do an observation log assignment. So this is something that you have that's due. The first thing you're going to be doing is a double entry notebook. Basically, this is the same thing that somebody who's a researcher would be doing for taking field notes. Notice that there are two sides to this. Let's take a look at this thing so you can see what I mean by two sides. Okay, here's what it's going to look like when you open it. Observation log and report. This is how one would look like if you were a scientist. You would put all this information, who's your name, what is the discourse community that you're going to be looking at, can be anything, the date of the observation, time of the observation, and the duration. So did you ride a bus and for 20 minutes and you observe the people on the bus, and that's the discourse community you're talking about, bus riders? Is it going to be, I went to church on Sunday morning? Whatever your discourse community is, notice that on this side you have observations and on this side you have thoughts, right? So on this side, you can type them, you can write them. This is really for you. So if you decide you want to do this in pen, which is actually what I would do because I'm old school. So if you want to do it in pen, print the observation log out, write them in pen. When you're submitting them to me, you can even use your cell phone and take a picture of it and submit a picture. That is okay with me. If you want to be really amazing, you can scan it and then submit the scan. But I know a lot of you don't have a scanner, so a picture will work. It doesn't have to be gorgeous handwriting, or it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. That's not the point of this. The point of this is for you to make observations, as many as possible. So for example, in this one, a sample entry would be the student sits in the dining hall as he eats his piece of pizza, which drips oil. He says, this pizza is good. Okay. Notice I didn't identify anybody by name. I'm just making observations. Now over here, I have thoughts about this, right? What are my thoughts about this observation? I saw the pizza. I saw the person pick up the pizza, say it's good. My thoughts are, it seems like the student really enjoys this high calorie content pizza, or whatever your thoughts are, right? So again, over here, observations, over here on thoughts about it, your thoughts, okay? And then you'll go down to the next page and do as many of these pages as you need to make the observations and the thoughts for whatever discourse community you have chosen, okay? So this is the first thing that you are doing, right? You're making your observations and then interpreting them, right? So the interpretation is intended for you to get a little deeper and think, okay, I saw this thing, but what am I getting out of what I saw? Okay, so you're synthesizing the impression of what you saw and being able to put it down. It's a bigger picture sort of thing, right? It helps you to think through this. So this is the first thing you're going to be actually printing out and doing and turning in. And you'll do it again. You can see that it's 2 and 4, so you'll do it twice. Now, review requirements for project 3. Although we haven't done project 1 yet, so this is like, oh, where did project 3 come from? This is looking ahead, okay? So we're just starting this project, but I want you to see where you're going with it, okay? So we do need to work through several of these things. Let's take a look at project 3. What is going to be the end result of what we're doing with these observations. Make it a little bigger. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you are applying what you've already learned about. Now, by the point we start talking about this, you're going to have learned about primary and secondary research. What is primary research? What is secondary research? Primary research is you actually finding the research yourself. So if I am making the observations, that is primary research. So your making of an observation log is the primary research. Secondary research would be like the second step, right? So if I'm reading somebody else's research, that's secondary research. If I'm doing the research, that's primary research. It's a little more complicated than that, but you'll understand when you do the reading. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to choose a discourse community. Choose a community with which you're unfamiliar and you would like to know more. Okay, so not one that you know a whole bunch about, maybe one that you're just starting to figure out. You're going to be developing a research question. What questions do you have about this community? Why do they play pickleball? What is this weird pickleball thing? But whatever your questions are, you're going to narrow that focus by synthesizing your research. And what does that mean? You're going to research your community with secondary sources. So you're going to say, okay, I want to research pickleball. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to read some articles about pickleball. Those are secondary sources. This could be scholarly ones or non-scholarly ones. And then I want to learn about this thing, right? I'm going to record a running list of questions about this community as I'm doing this. Where do they get paddles? How do they get training? Why is it called pickleball? Where did it come from? Whatever questions I might have about the whole thing. And then I'm going to be eventually conducting a 30-minute interview of a person that is willing to do an audio recording about whatever it is I'm doing. So if I'm doing it about pickleball, I got to go find a pickleball person that's willing to talk to me and be recorded. Recording is simple, using your cell phone. We'll get to that stuff too. But before you get to that interview, you obviously have to find someone. You're going to develop interview questions, which we will talk through as we move along. It says acquire audio recording equipment. Basically, you can just download this app called Otter, and ta-da, you have it. Okay, so that if you have an Android, there's some stuff here for you to think of. If you have an iPhone, there's other questions here. Notice that Blackboard will accept the following audio files when you get to this point. If you're using any of the stuff they recommend, it's going to be fine. You don't have to think about it any further. If you use some other app or some other thing, then you'll have to ask, does it save in these particular ways so that I can submit the darn thing to Blackboard. Now, you also need this. It's called a signed consent form from this person. And that person, it'll say that they allow you to record them for the purposes of this interview. Could be anonymous if they wish, but you're going to need to get that and submit it. And then eventually, once you've finished all these other things, you're going to write a 5 to 6 page essay that is a profile of this discourse community that you've researched, that you've interviewed, that you've observed. Okay. Now, purpose of this is all of these things. You're developing your understanding of this discourse community. You're analyzing explicit and implicit thoughts, right? Obvious ones and things that you're thinking about. You're going to build upon your prior knowledge. You're going to reflect upon how this inquiry contributes to a life of significance and worth. That is something that is continuing on from previous classes. It's the mission statement of Indiana Tech. We always want you to be thinking about that. What about this research makes your life have more significance and more worth? And we want you to know and be able to find and synthesize all these different sources. So there is a rubric. Eventually, when you get to project 3, you're going to be doing all these things, completing this rubric and finishing this. Now, going back over here, notice that I opened up project 3. There's also a reflection of what you did once you finish it. Now, again, this is not due this week. It's due in the future, so it's just giving you a heads up. And here is your consent form that you'll also need. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so consent form's pretty simple. My name is such and such. I'm doing this thing for Indiana Tech. I'm asking you to participate. The focus of the interview is discourse community about whatever it is, and then a consent form, a signature. Okay, so pretty simple, not necessarily legal, but just we want to make sure that this is okay to do this. So you want consent. Okay, so these are all things that you're going to be needing to think about moving forward. Okay, so this is not due this week. This is looking forward. Now we have some other stuff for you to help with. You're going to be learning APA style. So if that's not familiar to you or you need some extra research on it, there's some supplemental readings that are optional. And then there's always this discussion board. Every week you're going to have a discussion board. The discussion board is kind of, again, helping you propel yourself forward through this particular topic and share it with other students. Read theirs so you can go, oh, that's the questions they're asking. Those are good questions. I could ask those questions too. Or what kind of discourse community are you doing? Oh, I didn't think about that. It's to really help those ideas simmer in your head and to bounce them off of someone else. That's always going to be the case. Notice that we already have a couple of people that have participated in that. So if you haven't gotten that further, make sure you do. And then we have journal 1. There's a lot. Notice there's a lot of stuff here, guys. You cannot not do something every day or every other day, right? So this journal 1 is a list of 10 questions, and it's intended to be basically brainstorming for you to figure out what is this observation that I'm going to do and why. So again, you have to do the reading first before you do this journal. So in your own words, what's the difference between primary and secondary? What's the purpose of an institutional review board? You're not going to know the answers to those things until you do the reading. Okay, so make sure that you are going through in the right way, doing the reading, taking some notes if you need to. And then journal number 2 is observation log and report, right? Okay, so again, you have options for how you're going to submit things. Most of you are going to choose an upload because you're going to submit a file. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to click through. I'm not going to go through all this stuff because you have a lot of things going on. And then there's this live tech reflection, which it comes in late, but you can do this at any order. So what I would do is on Monday, do the reading. On Tuesday, listen to the live tech reflection or come. And then immediately do the live tech reflection and then continue on, right? So you don't have to wait till the end of the week to do the live tech reflection. Do it right away. So this is where we are. I have kind of walked you through module 1. This is what I will do each week. And at this point, I'm going to leave you with the last 10 minutes of a TED Talk that kind of talks you through why on earth would we want to do research and what's the deal. So see if we can make this thing work for you. Maybe. Let's see if we can't get it working. No.
What were they made of? In England, the 19th century physicist J.J.
Okay, there's one more minute of that, but we've reached the end of our time. I will post that in the announcements so that you can continue watching that should you want to do that. But that's the end of our class today. And I'm really glad to have met you guys and looking forward to meeting more of you.